Hi, you're watching Open Bar on Tequila Aficionado Media on all of our platforms. I'm Mike Morales here in San Antonio. That young man over there sitting on that side, his name is?
Romeo Hristov.
And Romeo, you've been really nice. You have been sending us certain types of glassware. Tell everybody what the name of your business is, first of all.
I have a small business in Austin, Texas, for artisanal glasses for tequila and mezcal. The name of the business is Chisholm Trail Crafts Glasses. It's a little bit longer, but I still love it.
You can find Chisholm Trail Craft Glasses if you're following us on any of our social media. He has a beautiful gallery on his website and also on Instagram, so you can get a hold of him. Some of you who have been watching our Sipping Off the Cuff programs may have seen us, myself and Rick Levy, using these particular prototypes. What you're looking at here in my hands, they're a little dirty, sorry about that, because I had to use them. These are prototypes that Romeo has been working closely with Stossel Glassware. Stossel has a famous glass company. I believe their office is back east in the United States, Pennsylvania perhaps. And anyway, these are for possibly tasting agave spirits, primarily mezcal and tequila, or tequila and mezcal. And so Romeo reached out to us and asked if we were amenable to testing glassware for that, and we said sure, because if for anybody who's watched us on previous Sipping Off the Cuffs, we've discussed the different types of glassware, the Riedel glassware, glassware care, Glencairn. We have a whole open bar with Martin Duffy, who was nice enough to supply us with Glencairns. He is the representative for Glencairn in the United States, Glencairn glassware, and so we said sure, and I got to tell you, we've made no bones about it. We think that tequila has outpaced the Riedel glass, and that and because of the craft cocktails and the craft movement in general, from craft beers all the way to craft tequilas, that the quality of tequila and agave spirits has outpaced the Riedel glassware, and so, in an effort to find something that was more that we were able to judge better agave spirits with, we said sure, and Romeo sent us a couple of samples, and we've been having fun with it ever since. So for those of you who are watching our shows, our Sipping Off the Cuffs, you'll see these glasses, and Rick has completely, just between you and me, Rick has completely almost gotten rid of every Riedel. Number one, because they break. I mean, stemware just breaks, and they're hard to keep in one piece. But he's fallen in love with the Glencairns. Alex Perez, our founder, has just loves these glasses now, and so just by that, by those of us who love agave spirits and tequila, we're merging away from stemware in order for us to find something better, and so that's where Romeo comes in. But tell everybody, I want to know more about your background. How did you wind up doing glassware? Like, why glassware? Why Austin? You know?
Well, my interest first of all in the agave spirits, and after that in the drinkware for agave spirits, started in a bit unusual way. I started my study in archaeology and anthropology in Mexico in 1990, my bachelor degree actually.
Oh, okay.
The topic of research that brought me in Mexico was the mixture of the cultures of the Old World and Mesoamerica, or Colombia, Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my former professors in the university called my attention that the tequila is one of the earliest examples for such a cultural fusion of the new and the old world cultures in the early colonial period. Practically all the historians of the tequila coincide that the tequila started to be distilled between somewhere 1530 and 1550.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, by one hand, we have the tradition of the pre-Columbian pulque, which was a sacred drink, not what we call today recreational.
Yes.
But a sacred drink. And by other hand, we have the tradition of the Alhambra, the distillation that the Spaniards learned from the Arabs and brought to the New World. When these two traditions come together, the tequila was born, but actually there is much deeper meaning of all this process. That's the same process from which the modern Mexican nation was born, and pretty much in the same period, the mid-16th century, when the first generation of mestizo, or the modern Mexican nation, also came into existence. So the cultural, the historical background of the tequila is very deep, very unique for any other spirit that I can think for comparison. It's something very special. Of course, I should be hypocrite to say that I don't like the taste of the spirit. I love it, but I think for the tequila become a real fascination when these two things come together. This unique, fascinating cultural, historical background and a spirit that have a unique, very special quality at its own too.
So you're originally from Europe, correct?
Yes.
What did you grow up in Mexico? Was it?
I came to Mexico when I was 26 years old, and I came specifically to study that. I was interested in the Mexican archaeology and history.
Yeah, so that was natural. I remember speaking with you previously, and you mentioned to me that, and I did some research on this also briefly yesterday. I was writing notes for official notes for this glassware to submit to Romeo, and you told me, and I discovered also that stemware, the stem of a vessel, or a handle, are European inventions. When I say European, the information that I found was was in England. I guess where glassware it was where it was commercialized primarily in England. Although I think the Chinese invented everything. So the Chinese were exporting into tea vessels into England. Because they were more proud of their porcelain. At least that's the information that I had found out. In any case, when I did a search for Mesoamerican vessels, it was interesting. I Googled it, and there was a Pinterest board that came up, several Pinterest boards, that these were vessels that were discovered in archaeological digs in Mexico and Mesoamerica, all of it. And not one of them had a handle. They had the etchings and the pictographs that meant something, because the vessels were, not only was the liquid they were drinking ceremonial. Matter of fact, chocolate. The vessels had chocolate in them. But not one of those vessels had a handle. And so I'm thinking to myself, Romeo was right. For a Mexican spirit, it is actually more historically accurate to hold it in your hand. And I made mention in my notes that this allows the imbiber to be more intimate with his or her liquid. I don't know if you agree with me or not, but it was interesting to find all those relics that are in museums now, and not one of them had a handle. Not any of them.
That's a complex topic, and there can be different perspectives, different personal preferences, different justification. Personally, as far as I know, the history of the drinkware for the agave spirits, this is the history of the stemless drinkware, starting from the Jicara Mescalero or the the gourd for drinking mezcal, going through the drinking jar, ending up with the little horn for drinking tequila, sabayin for the shot glass, or the vaso veladora for mezcal. All that stuff is basically a stemless drinking ware. For me, is drinking any spirit is, including agave spirit, is kind of sensorial experience that involve at least three major senses: the sense of taste, smell, and tact. And for the modern, more sophisticated and more expensive spirit, it's very important quality is the nosing quality, obviously. But there is a sense also, besides of this practical side, of the inner connection between the spirit and the drinking vessel. I'll give you an example. I'm personally familiar with at least two drinking vessels for Scotch whiskey which are better than the Glencairn. None of them selling the amount that Glencairn sell, and from this perspective, the reason for that is a very unique, very intimate connection between the Glencairn and the Scotch whiskey, and whiskey in general. This is a category that is a little bit abstract, but it's very, very real. This almost spiritual inner connection, sharing of the legacy between the spirit and the drinking vessel. And I believe this particular quality was best summarized by Richard Patterson when introducing the Glencairn glass. He showed it to the public and said that when you hold the Glencairn glass, you don't think about wine, you think about Scotch whiskey. Now, in the same way how the agave spirits are unique for Mexico, there is a unique and very old and surprisingly functional drinking vessel for the agave spirit, the drinking jar. Actually, the colonial version of the drinking jar, show one example here, come always with handle. The pre-Columbian versions come both with and without handle, and the use of the jarrito, or the drinking jar, for alcoholic beverages from agave is very well documented, at least to the 14th century AD, with the use of the pulque, the predecessor of the tequila. However, there is a new archaeological research that is just started to be published that the jarrito, especially the version without handle, have been used for drinking alcoholic beverages from agave as far back as the 4th century AD.
Wow.
It's, the 4th century BC, actually.
BC, yes.
This is actually a very old vessel, and at the same time, if you look at the shape of it, this is a surprisingly functional vessel by the modern criteria. It's one of the same shape, the same born pretty much like one of the two main nosing glasses of today, the tulip snifter, in this case the stemless tulip snifter, and the other being the balloon snifter. So you have a fascinating combination, from my perspective, of legacy and functionality within this drinking vessel, and at the same time all this very basic, very hard to find connection of the legacy of the spirit and the drinking vessel, in this case the agave spirits and the drinking vessel. So I think it's interesting possibility to be used to try to be, how I shall put it, to be used to recreate a modern drinking vessel for agave spirits.
I agree. I know that having done taste testing with the and we call these jarritos. This is I love, number one, that we're calling it something in Spanish that is really an easy word to pronounce, as opposed to some of the tequila brands that we've been talking about, like El Serpiente Emplumada. You know, that's a long word. It's a mouthful for somebody who can't pronounce it. But when you see these, I think the elegance is in the simplicity, in my opinion. Again, this is all based on my opinion anyway. But I agree with you that I think that it's time for you know, there was a time, and we were talking about this off camera. There was a time when the Riedel glass was developed to elevate the image of tequila, and you know, from a shot to an elegant sipper, and now it's succeeded. It has you know, in my opinion, it's run its course. It has succeeded, and now because of the craft, the what's driving the market now is craft anything. I think now the time has come for tequila to claim its heritage as well as its elegance. And I agree with you. I think there's nothing more elegant than a simplistic design that is exclusively for agave spirits. And it would be really neat one day, if it was possible, to look at a vessel like this and go, oh, hey, that's a tequila glass. You know, because there are people who still mistake these as wine glasses or champagne glasses. As a matter of fact, these tend to be very expensive even now in bulk, that it just becomes cheaper to buy champagne glasses to do something similar. And none of them have, you know, a lot of them will have a much thicker glass and heavier base, which I think you explain to me, Romeo, because I believe that the thicker the glass, the more incongruence exists between nosing and tasting. Does that make sense? You know, in other words, if the glass is too thick, it's great for nosing. I mean, I can use an example, and I don't have it with me, the Stossel nosing glass. You see it a lot in bourbon tastings and whiskey tastings for whiskeys and bourbons in the United States. You see, and they're beautiful glasses. They do exactly what they're supposed to do. They're great for nosing. But to me, there was a disappointment that the nose and the intake, the flavor profiles weren't the same. There was an incongruence there, in my opinion. And yet, I wasn't getting that with these. Everything, there was a consistency between nosing and tasting. Is that the case? Or is nosing everything, and am I just talking out of the side of my mouth?
No. Generally, I agree with you, Mike. Generally, the thinner the glass, the thinner the glass wall of the drinking vessel, the less distraction you can get in your mouth from the crystal, and you can focus better in the characteristic of the spirit itself. The first prototype actually comes slightly thicker. We were looking to make them thinner, and with the second prototypes that we got, the walls are thinner, pretty much the standard 1.1 millimeters, the same thickness like the Glencairn glass actually.
Yes.
So it was, I like to claim some special design, but it was a mistake. No mistake, just production detail that wasn't as well controlled. About the new glassware, I believe in the same way how the tequila is evolved these days, especially in the way how it's evolved with, you can see tremendous changes in terms of popularity, sophistication, complexity of the tequila. We will see more and more new glasses come just to offer pretty much what we saw in the world of the whiskey. You have the Highland whiskey glass, the Lowland, you have single malt, you have many other glasses. So as far as the spirit become more popular, you will have a different tastes, different options of glassware. The glass that we work now is, I think, one of the many new options that will come in the market.
Well, you know, you were nice enough early on in our conversations, which was like a late 2016. You were really nice enough to send us a couple of these Luigi Bormioli, which I mentioned in one of our write-ups. To me, here's the funny thing. During the time that you sent this glass to me, these glasses to myself and to Lisa Peach, our CMO, we were in the middle of doing our Brands of Promise tastings. And some of you people who follow us, you saw our videos, you saw our tables just full of tequila. for different categories. We were tasting blancos. And I have, and I'll be honest, I have a bunch of Riedels. I do. I even have some in storage I haven't been able to bring back with me yet. But so as you know, for practical purposes, I was tasting a lot of these in Riedels. But the interesting thing was when there was a tie for me, when there was a conflict between one brand and another brand's Blanco or Repo, whatever the category was, I went to this one, and it would clarify it for me as to which one was better. And I noticed, you know, this is a very expensive piece. I don't know if anybody can see this. It's beautifully etched. This is the Pepito etching that I'm going to ask you about in a second. But the glass, this being, and I didn't even know who the manufacturer was until you told me, this is an Italian glass. Tell me a little bit the properties of this glass and what makes it so special. I thought it was the thinness of the glass, and yet it's very sturdy. I'm not afraid of holding it. You know what I mean? It's very firm, not like some people who handle Riedels, we're even afraid to be washing these by hand, you know? So tell me some of the qualities. What makes this such a great glass for what it is?
I think it's a very well designed glass to start with. The thickness of the wall is pretty much the same like the Glencairn glass, and the second sample of the Carito tumbler that we have, it's about 1.1 millimeters, so the thickness is pretty much the same. But I think it's a very, very well designed glass. The Luigi Bormioli have their center for designing a glass. They pay a lot of attention on that, and I believe they collaborate with very respected Italian center for designer glasses, and it's named Center for Sensorial Research in Brescia in Italy. So they did a real fine job. And as you say, the stem is thin, but it's not weak. It's an elegant, sleek glass. It works well. They call it Universal Spirit Snifter. I just realized 2 years ago that it works well with tequila and mezcal, actually pretty well.
It does.
Price it's not a specially designed glass for agave spirit, but worked pretty well with them. What actually makes it special, from my perspective in this case, is the engraving, the Pepita engraving.
Yes.
I mentioned about the importance of this inner connection between the legacy of the glass and the spirit. There is another aspect of good quality glass which I call the artisanal quality. That means, well, obviously the very same name implied.
Right.
How well is made the glass, who made it, how well is decorated. There is a very interesting, well, the first glass in the Americas actually was produced in Mexico in 1542. And around this period, the mid-16th century, Mexico also started to evolve the first American technique for glass and crystal engraving, the Pepita, or small seed technique. It's basically a wheel cutting technique, relatively simple technique. I'll show one example also from my side to see it, one of the new design that Mr. and I are working on. But in the hands of skilled artisan, this technique can produce a pattern of exceptional beauty and delicacy. And I also found that, well, I was surprised to find that the tequila and the mezcal share some interesting particulars. For example, both of them originated in the same place, Mexico, in the same period of time, mid-16th century, and ever more important, from the same process of mixture of the cultures. The technique of the Pepita was invented somewhere in Central Europe, Germany or the Czech Republic, late 14th, perhaps 15th century. The Spaniard brought it to Mexico, but in Mexico it was changed, it was enriched with new pre-Columbian design until it evolved basically in something very distinctively Mexican. And I think this is a nice combination, you know, adding this artisanal touch, artisanal beauty and elegance to the functionality of the drinking vessel.
I remember you sending me a link from let's see, the what is the name of the name of the tequila, Casa Dragones. There are some bottles of Casa Dragones that are etched by this artisan that he and his associates produce and do on glassware. It's a fascinating video. I'm gonna include it, the link to that video when we publish your interview here on Open Bar, so that people can see what it takes to work on. And for those of you who have a bottle of Casa Dragones, the Joven, it's a crystal decanter. It's made of a particular type of crystal. My question is, what type of glass is this? Is the glass different?
It's a similar category glass. It's a lead-free crystal. That means a crystal that is made without the lead oxide. Technically speaking, they are a similar category of crystalware. The bottle of the Casa Dragones, you know, in the past 15, 30, 20 years, most of the production of the crystal is switching to lead-free crystal. By obvious reason, the lead is not something so good for the health. So,
right.
The people, yes.
Will this glass be able to be decorated? Because
yeah, definitely.
So it will stand up to the type of etching and workmanship that this is necessary.
Perfectly well. Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so between these two glasses, which crystal is? Well, this is not crystal. This is glass, correct?
Oh, this is actually a lead-free crystal. Stossel produced a very high-quality lead-free crystal for about 200 years, long before Bormioli started to make it.
Good, because I want to make a distinction, because for those of us who are, for lack of a better term, geeks. I used to be in the food business, okay, and I used to sell paper, food, and chemicals. I sold everything but booze, and people that follow me, they know that's my background. I sold Libby glassware to restaurants. Libby is one of the oldest. You can buy a Libby glasses at Target, you know, at Walmart, and they make a particularly thick glass because it has to stand up to washing and rewashing and use and restaurant, you know, in hospitality. So this isn't what you're looking at. Is not a Libby glass. You're not going to find this at a Walmart or a Target. Okay, Stossel is sold by a catalog, and you have to have a Stossel representative, you know, who handles that territory to be able to find. You'll be able to find these glasses should they make their catalog. So that's why I wanted to make a distinction of the simplicity. This is not just glass. It's crystal. It is a viable, elegant tool that can be decorated. I mean, I can see a nice, you know, you could do something as elaborate as this with it. And is there a reason why this feels so sturdy though? Is it just simply craftsmanship, or am I, you know, I know these are probably been mass produced, and I don't know if these are. I know very little about the Bormioli glassware. In fact, I knew very little about glassware until I met you. So, you know, tell me what makes something like this better than something like that, and not to be. I'm not trying to, you know, cast aspersions. I just want to know the quality difference. You know, why am I going to pay so much for this, and why am I going to pay so much for that? Besides the fact that this is Italian and this may be Austrian. I don't. Well, this is USA probably at this point.
No, it's German actually.
It's German. Okay.
The Riddell is Austrian company, but the Riddell Overture glass is made in Germany.
Okay.
I think the Riddell Overture glass is a very elegant and very sleek glass.
Oh yeah.
Coming in the tequila business, I believe it delivers a kind of vision for the future of the tequila, for the sophistication, the cosmopolitanism, the elegance, the popularity, if you want to have that, the popularity which come actually much more than was expected. So it's important part of the development of the tequila. It's pretty functional glass. Just back then in the 2002, 2003, as we discussed one time, the añejo tequila simply wasn't very popular, if popular at all, and extra añejo didn't exist.
Yeah.
So the Riedel glass actually is not bad glass, just it came in other times when the tequila was our thing. Now, in technical sense, the main difference between the Borneoli glass and the tequila ouverture glass, if you grab them like that, Mike, pass your finger right here where the stem is connected to the bowl of the glass, you will see a little bump with the Riedel glass, and you won't feel this bump with the Borneoli glass.
Yeah, it's almost like welding. You know, sometimes you see a nice clean weld on a machine, and you see, you know, there's a lump right here. You can see it's a natural, like a perforation of some sort. You can feel it with your thumbnail, and it doesn't exist on this one at all.
The Borneoli glass was made with a newer technology that is called pull-out steam. That means you have one ball of molten crystal, and from this ball you pull everything, the bowl, the stem, and the base of the glass. It's basically a little bit sturdier glass, just because it's made from one piece of glass and not of 2 or 3 separate pieces of the glass that are work together.
Okay.
But each of them, like anything else in life, have its own advantages and disadvantages.
Is there an advantage to having a balloon, or I call, I don't know, a slightly wider bottom as opposed to one that's just straight up and down like this? I call it a bell shape, for lack of a better word, and maybe my notes were incorrect because, you know, I look at the Glencairn and it looks like a bell. I mean, it kind of has that bell shape. So, I know that I feel there's an advantage. Is there really an advantage by having a bell and maybe a shorter neck? Because this one, you can see the reel has a much longer neck than the Borneoli. It's a much longer glass, as a matter of fact. I don't know if you can see that, but anyway, and it sounds different too. I mean, is there a difference when you have a bell that you don't have to have as long a neck?
Well, when you have a bigger lower chamber of the bowl of the glass, you have a little bit extra oxygenation surface to do the swirling and oxygenation of the spirit, and in most of the cases at least, it opens the spirit better and let it express more and faster of its aromatic profile. But again, it depends on the spirit, depends on the personal preference. But in my opinion, the Borneoli Universal Spirit Snifter is very versatile, very well designed glass. It's not perfect glass for anything, there is no such thing, but it's very well designed and very versatile glass.
Well, like I said, it helped me come to a few decisions on my on who would get, you know, a gold medal versus a silver medal, you know, because the qualities were so close that I felt that I needed something a little bit more precise, you know, because the quality of the tequila is just the quality of the agave spirits in general, I think, are improving so much. And this year, I don't know how we're going to do it, because we have probably this year for our sipping off the cuff programs, we have the most agave spirits have been entered that we've ever had in previous years. I mean, I'm really glad I have other tasters, because I don't know how we're gonna do it. And the quality is still there. It's not that all this stuff is mass produced. It's just, you know, everybody's upping their game, and so I think, having judged in competitions before, I think judging competitions, which is what some of these brands are vying for. You know, they want that medal, they want that gold, the double platinum, the silver. They pay money, good money, to be in these competitions. I think that a good competition glass levels playing fields, in my opinion, and I make that clear in my notes as well. So I really appreciated having had the option of using this type of glass to make my decisions in our little tasting program here at Brands of Promise. The other thing I was going to ask you is alcohol. A lot of times, depending on the spirit, there's a lot of alcohol that is evident. Sometimes you'll hear a lot of complaints about people that open up bottles of tequila as soon as they get them home, and there's a lot of alcohol, and that's a complaint, as if it were a bad processing or something. I know better. Would you say that a design like this, a balloon design, or what was I calling it, a bell design, allows for the non-intrusion of alcohol to make its appearance? Or, as you said, it's great for aerating. I mean, you know, the swirling, it's great. Does it seem to trap alcohol a little bit?
I think with the Bormioli, you will start to feel some burning at the nose from the ethanol going with spirits above 50% ABV. But still is very versatile glass.
The reason I ask is because, and I put this in my notes as well, having spoken to master distillers of tequila, they feel that the alcohol, what one smells as the ethanol or whatever, is a vital element in tequila because it carries the aromas as well.
Of course, yeah.
And so muting that alcohol smell that people don't like. I mean, they like you said, there's an alcohol burn, you know, and people will, and sometimes the average layman or the tequila fanatic or the tequila aficionado who buys a lot of tequila, gets it home, opens it, says, "There's a lot of alcohol in it." You know, they may not at first glance learn that it needs to open up and bloom, that the alcohol is a natural thing. This is Texas here. You and I live in Texas, so you know that when you get a delivery of tequila, I'm gonna let it sit at room temp for at least a day, because I unpackage those things and they're packed in styrofoam or anything insulated so that they don't break, but by the same token they heat up the juice. So of course I'm gonna get a lot of alcohol. If you live in Las Vegas and you're watching us, I've talked to friends in Vegas who do tequila tastings, and the only way to carry tequila in Vegas on a summer day is on ice. There's just no other way. You know, especially if you're gonna sample it, and we know that ice deadens some of the nuances, the subtleties, the characteristics of an agave spirit. So the reason I ask about the bell is, does this shape tend to diffuse the alcohol enough so that it doesn't intrude on your nosing process? Because there's no bell shape on a Riedel, and so if you're not careful at a higher ABV, you're gonna, you know, like you said, I'm gonna light these nose hairs on fire. You know, so
you see, in order to reduce the impact of the ethanol of the nose, you need to let some of the ethanol go, and you obviously will let go also some of the aromatics. The question is, I think, about the balance, how much ethanols, how much aromatics you want to let go. You cannot let some of the burning go without losing some of the aromatics. Again, it's a question of balance, how you will find, and that sometimes is the tricky part with any glass, how you will design it.
Yeah, I like I say, I always look for alcohol, and with a Riedel, for instance, we were taught to break it up in 3 levels, and the alcohol should be at the bottom, you know. And the other thing that I and a lot of people who have seen our shows, our tastings, they've seen me do it. You literally got to stick your nose right in it, and yeah, you got to dig in, right? And what amazed me with a glass like this, or with the Stossel Jarrito, is that it was much more agreeable, like we were taught with the Glencairn. you should hold a Glencairn from your chest or to your stomach, and the aromas should come up to greet you. That's how using this glass, we were taught to use this glass, and this is very similar, especially if you're dealing with craft tequilas, as I was, that it made nosing and tasting so much easier than really working for it, because you have to really work for it to especially now if you're using it drinking a tequila made from a diffuser, you're trying to find anything in the tequila,
We work somehow on this balance of the ethanol burning and the proper expression of the aromatic profile. I believe we get pretty lucky. I like to climb some super scientific design, but mostly is kind of art approach, sensibility, some luck, and knowing few basics too. I think this new Jarrito tumbler actually is very similar to Glencairn. Yes, this one. It expresses in similar way the aromatic profile, a little bit better perhaps some of the floral notes than the Glencairn. Glencairn put some extra emphasis on the agave. And the initial nosing, the perseverance is very similar. I believe they're pretty comparable glass, just one. The Jarrito tumbler, I hope, or I like to think so, it's a little bit better rooted in the history of the agave spirits, of the legacy of the kind of particular drink where you use it for drinking this kind of spirits.
I agree. Again, these are just based on opinions, but perhaps in the future, we'll be able to handle more of these, sent these out to some of our other tasters throughout the country, so they'll give them a chance to play around with it. I got Romeo's permission to publish my notes on a future article for Tequila Aficionado after I submit them to him, of course. And that'll be kind of nice because people will get a chance to see. We did some comparison, the feel of the Riedel versus the feel of the Glencairn, and then finally how the Jarrito feels and operates. And again, a lot of this is it's based on experience and my opinion. Somebody's opinion could be completely different. That they could say, this is the lousiest thing ever, But I don't think so. I think in my personal opinion, I think this would be an excellent, viable tool. It will be part of my toolkit when we do our Brands of Promise judging at the end of the year, because I think it'll be a very viable tool as well with the Bormioli. I think it's important if you're going to do this, or even if you're just an agave spirit fanatic, that you have more than one tool in your tool chest, because these are, people laugh at me, but this is the truth. This is my tool. These are my tools, and if somebody says to me, "Hey, I got a better drill," or "I got a better drill bit," I'm going to listen to them, because they're the expert and they know, and hopefully somewhere before the end of the year, we may find out what Stossel decides on the prototype, if they want to continue testing it, or if it's something that they want to go forward with. Romeo will keep us posted. Just personally, what drew you to tequila besides, you studied there and you lived there and all that? What was there? Was it? Do you prefer blancos over añejos? Do you like reposados? Are you more traditional? Do you like organic tequilas? What do you gravitate to when you go out and or when you have friends over or whatever?
Mike, that's a very interesting question. For a long time, I drink almost exclusively tequila blanco. I believe that the very same soul of the spirit, the agave, comes best in the tequila blanco. But a couple of years ago, I was introduced to a very unique organic tequila. It's a private production, it's not commercial tequila. It was aged in uncharted French oak barrel for over 30 years.
Wow.
Opened for me a world of elegance, aroma, sophistication with the tequila that, without losing the soul, the agave was there but was delicate, gentle, richer. So I changed a little bit my mind, honestly. I'm much more open to approach these days to the aged tequilas also. But I still prefer the tequila blanco or the white tequila.
Good. I agree with you. I think it's the I think it's a good indicator of the rest of the line. I've said it so many times that if you like the blanco, then it's a really good indicator how the rest of the line is going to progress. And it's not always the indicator of quality, but it sure is. Yeah, I have not met one proud tequila producer or master distiller who will not put up his blanco against anyone else's. If he's proud of his tequila, he will more than happily put up a blanco next to another blanco first before he shares his his añejos and reposados and that sort of thing. So how did you wind up in Texas? I mean, again, the glassware from archaeology to glassware, was that like a natural progression, or did you kind of fall into that, or how did that work?
I guess I just read way too much the old J. Frank Doggy stories of all these pictures of the old Mexico and the old Texas, and I find it a place where I feel very comfortable. I try to live in other places, but I never feel in the same way in home as in Texas. This is not just empty, beautiful words. Actually, there is an old joke of Sacha Guitry, a famous French comic, that to be Parisian, you don't need to be born in Paris. You just need to be reborn there. I guess Texas have pretty much plenty of the personality to feel that you can be Texan if you are capable of being born here. But I like also the mixture of the old Mexico and the old Texas and the United States here. I find it a very nice place, actually.
Good deal. So, after you've left your studies, and were you a professor? Did you teach archaeology, or were you really in? Yeah, I think you mentioned earlier you were involved in some archaeological digs. You were in there in the trenches, right?
Work I didn't really teach in the States, exception I taught Spanish for one semester in a college. But I was a business scholar for several years in the University of Texas at Austin.
Okay.
And I let some things go there. I may or may not be able to return, but I may give a try again. We'll see how things are going.
Well, yeah. If this is an indicator of what's next, it'll be really exciting. I think that we're on the precipice of something really exciting in tequila, in for the craft spirits that are craft agave spirits that are coming up. What you and I mentioned, I talked with you earlier before we were on camera about how mezcal doesn't have an official glass like the Riedel does, but you can pretty much serve mezcal out of your shoe, and all it will do is add another extra layer of complexity without changing a flavor profile. What do you see? Do you see a glass like this being versatile for both tequilas and agave spirits, or have you had a lot of mezcals too? I know you have a lot of tequilas at a higher ABVs, but have you had enough mezcals to play around with?
I did, and I tested very recently and very extensively with a friend of mine in Dallas. I was appreciative his opinion. To start with, the tequila is a kind of mezcal. The mezcals made from different agaves, that the blue Weber agave usually are a little bit more intense and more aromatic with some more smokiness. But there is not, again, there is enough difference, but speaking in generic terms, there is not so much difference really. But I was very surprised at how well this glass worked with mezcals, mezcals with higher ABV. I was truly surprised, and again, the Jarrito is very deeply connected with the mezcal, perhaps not so much with the tequila, but with the mezcal. If you go to rural Oaxaca, you will find a lot of these Jarritos still use it to drink mezcal. And it's, in the colonial period, you have nearly 5 centuries of use of these drinking vessels for mezcal. So a similar shape of the vessel, the handle, the presence or the absence of the handle is mostly a detail, but the shape of the vessel is pretty much, good for mezcal too.
Mm-hmm. Romeo's Glassware will be going on tour with us on our Wild Wild West tour. I'm really anxious to expose people to this, what could be a new glassware for tequila and mezcal. What would you like people to know about these prototypes? What is it, if there was one thing that you wanted to, one point that you wanted to get across to people who were merging or migrating from one type of glass to this, what would you do? What would you tell them?
I share my thought, my personal thought and hopes when we were working in this glass, that we were looking to combine our old and remarkable legacy of drinking vessel for agave spirits with modern functionality. I will be very curious to learn after your tour how much of that we accomplished by the reference of the Tequila and Mezcal Aficionados.
Me too. And I think that's the purpose of these tours anyway, is we just want to spread the love, whether it's a brand you've never heard of or one that's not available in your state. Where the magic happens for us on our tours is when we share. And that's really our bottom line. So I want to make sure that I'm able to share, at least if all I have time for is one element, I want to be able to make sure that I get that point across. And coming from you, I want to make sure that you instruct me properly on that. We've come to the end of Open Bar with Romeo, but I want to make sure that we mention your website. It's Chisholm Trail Craft Glasses, right? .com. Okay.
Yes.
We'll make sure that the link is available. You'll see it at on the text at when we publish this interview. Was there something you wanted to find out from us, Romeo? Was there something that you wanted to or share with the audience that has stuck around with us for glassware?
Well, just the personal perspective that in the same way how the agave spirits are unique for Mexico, they have enough legacy, enough quality of their own to try to look to introduce more unique drinking vessels, unique in the same way how the agave spirits are unique for Mexico. I mean, connected with these old legacies of the drinking vessels for agave spirits in the market. I believe there is so much variety of agave spirits today with so deep and complex aromatic profile that this is just a natural way to go. Actually, just to give an example, another world famous spirit, the whiskey, display about 400 different aromas, in difference the tequila, and the agave spirits in general display up to 600. So there is a lot that a glass with a good nosing quality and a good aesthetic, a good functionality can offer in order to have a richer, deeper sensorial experience with the chosen agave spirits.
Did you yourself, I'm sure you probably have you tasted these with añejos and reposados? Did you go through the whole spectrum or just blancos?
Yes.
What did you think of the differences when you did blancos versus reposados versus añejos? Was there something that struck you about the quality of the jarrito that was something that surprised you? In other words, because I was constantly surprised. I made mention in my notes that tasting tequila out of this jarrito versus what we're used to tasting, and not just exclusively Glencairn, but more toward the Riedel, that it was like watching television in HD. You know, our computers shoot in HD. You're watching us in high def. So there was stuff that was coming to me that normally I gotta dig for. You know, I gotta work for. And was there something in the añejos and reposados and maybe the extra añejos that you found was a surprise to you? That, wow, you know, was it an eye opener for you?
I mostly tested it again the Glencairn glass because it's the glass that very often is used in the United States for professional testing of tequila and lately mezcal. What I found very surprising, and I was doubting in the beginning, it's my imagination or it's real, is they have a similar degree of focus, sharpness, complexity, but I like the Jarrito tumbler in a sense that it's expressing some floral elements with the Reposado, Añejo, and Extra Añejo slightly better than the Glencairn. Glencairn puts some extra focus in the agave. The Jarrito expresses very well the agave, but also expresses some secondary and tertiary aromas, in my opinion, with a little bit extra focus than the Glencairn.
Yeah, like I said, there was some surprises to me that, and I'll just share it really briefly with you that there was one particular tequila that we tasted last night. As a matter of fact, I used the smaller jarrito, believe it or not, and I got wet cement, and I haven't smelled wet cement in a tequila in a long time, and it was just one of those in a pass through that went, you know. It was like a shudder. It was really exciting to me, you know, because normally when we get these new tequilas for our show, if I have time, I will taste them, and primarily I'll taste them in a Riedel, and I'm very rarely ever surprised. And I'm not, now that I have a variety of glassware to choose from, I've been using more the Glencairn and lately, just in the last couple of weeks, these. And I am constantly surprised. I made mention in my notes also that I thought that I got sweeter notes on the añejo and reposado, and I just want to make sure I'm on the right page and I'm not imagining all this stuff.
I get the same sweeter notes too. Yes.
Yeah. See, I'm not totally nose blind, but I'm Romeo. I'm so glad that we had a chance to meet. I've actually met you in person briefly when David Suro was out here in May. I think you're looking at the next. For those of you who have watch all our shows, this is the next tool for your toolkit right here. I'm telling you, Jarrito, Jarrito, really easy to remember. Romeo, thank you, man. I appreciate you for coming on the show and for being with us on Open Bar, and especially on a hot day like today. This is like the mid-July when people who are watching this show, it could be August, but it's hot. It's hotter than hell in mid-July. So, anything else that you'd like to share with our audience before we sign off?
Nothing about it, Mike. My utmost thanks for your kindness and the interest in this project.
Hey, thank you for reaching out, for reaching out and opening up our eyes. I think we're onto something, and as we said, I think we're heading to a new emergence and a natural progression from what we've had to work with since 2001 until now, 17, 18 years later. Now with the explosion of the craft segment of the market, I think this is where it's headed. Real simple. I'm Mike Morales here in San Antonio. You have been watching Open Bar with Romeo Hristov of Chisholm Trail Craft Glasses in Austin, Texas. watch us, again shortly. We'll be back with another open bar and other guests. But thanks for sticking around. And as we like to say on Tequila Aficionado, sip wisely.